Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us to today's event surrounding health innovation in the Rocky Mountain region. We are delighted and honored to share this uber engaging panel of speakers with you today. I'm Catherine Cerisa, the Director of Business Development here at the World Trade Center, Denver. Our mission is to facilitate healthy trade relations in and out of the Rocky Mountain region, which supports democracy between the United States and our trade partners. We have a plethora of exciting events coming up in 2021, so please check out our calendar on WTCdenver.org. Additionally, we offer trade services and B2B connections. Here with us today to introduce an opportunity for real connections and real growth with our colleagues from the Netherlands is Freek Faber from the World Trade Center in Twente, Netherlands. Thank you, Freek.
Thank you for having me. In a 1-minute pitch, I can say how we connect the world. The Twente region is on the line of Amsterdam to Berlin. In Germany, it's the last stop in the Netherlands. We are an innovative region with focusing on high-tech systems and smart materials. And within our business club, we have a strong Medtech cluster. And we work together with companies, with educational institutions, and also with government. And the Medtech group focuses on e-health, health robotics, artificial intelligence and imaging, and bio-nanotech. So invitation to companies in Colorado to connect with Dutch companies. You can connect with World Trade Center Denver to get my details, because World Trade Center is about people that know people and connecting businesses.
Thank you so much for that. We look forward to hearing from all the audience members that would like to participate in real connections and real growth with B2B connections with Twente in the Netherlands. Next, I'd love to introduce Jennifer Pettin from the Colorado BioSciences Association, our partner for today's event.
Thanks, Catherine, and thank you to the World Trade Center Denver. It's really, truly an honor to be a partner with you all on today's event, and I look forward to the discussion with all the panelists. Just a quick little bit about the Colorado BioScience Association. We are an organization that represents the life sciences ecosystem in the state of Colorado, and that's more than 720 companies and organizations, which is very exciting. Our life science companies and organizations make significant impact on our state in employing more than 32,000 people in the state, and we represent $2.8 billion in annual payroll. Our members joining us today on this panel, and we see members that are in the audience, are doing truly incredible work that save and change lives around the world. And they represent all of that innovation that is out there and coming out of Colorado. And just we're proud to be a partner in today's event and look forward to the discussion. And I think with that, it is my job to turn it over to our moderator for today's panel discussion, David Perez. David Perez is a longtime leader of the Colorado's life sciences ecosystem and formerly with Terumo BCT. But David, I'll let you give a little bit more about yourself and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate it. And welcome to all the guests participating in the call today. As I said, I'm David Perez, spent my career in healthcare. And then the last 20 years, I was with Terumo BCT. But before that, it was Co-BCT, Gambro BCT, Ceridian BCT during private equity, and then Terumo BCT with the blood and cell technologies business. And it was just a pleasure to lead the organization for those many years. And today, I retired back in 2019. Today, I serve on the board of directors of 5 private equity companies, all in medical device and in vitro diagnostics, some not-for-profit organizations that I feel very passionate about, Book Trust and the Nurse Family Partnership, and involved civically here in the Denver area with the Blackstone Entrepreneurs Network. So thank you for the opportunity to participate with everyone. I'm going to let our panelists do some introductions. And Jennifer, I'm going to kick it back to you. Why don't we start off with you, maybe give a little bit of background on yourself. You and I have known each other for many years, but maybe introduce yourself to the audience.
Great, thanks, David. Again, Jennifer Jones-Payton, President and CEO of Colorado BioScience Association. I am a Colorado Denver native and very passionate about the work that we do at Colorado BioScience Association. I've been with the organization for 4 years now, President and CEO for just a little over 2 years. And it's just truly, honestly, been inspiring, I would say, even this last year around COVID. And I look forward to sharing some of the great work that we've seen our industry step up and put out in terms of innovation around COVID. But yeah, it's a little bit about me. Thanks.
Thanks. I'd like to turn it over to Tom. Tom is a dear friend. We've known each other, Tom, I think for over 30 years. So glad to have you on the panel.
Yeah, closer to 40 years, David. You and I actually started our careers together at a predecessor to what is now Medtronic, right? So
Yes,
we've
exactly.
known each other for a long time. I am Tom Cycyota. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much. I work for an organization called AlloSource. We're a biotech and medical device company down in Centennial, Colorado, and our claim to fame is that we process donated human tissue. So for our Colorado participants, if you have that heart on your driver's license, we're the folks who get your bones, your skin, your tendons, and we operate like a medical device company where we can make transplantable tissue and be able to provide that both locally here in the Colorado area as well as nationally and internationally. So we take great pride in the fact that we're the largest homegrown biotech medical device company here in the state, where we're based in the state and incorporated in the state. One of the things that people ask, well, what does that mean you get donated human tissue? Frankly, the way it operates is somebody passed away yesterday in one of the communities that are kind enough to support our organization, and that tissue gets recovered and sent to us today, and we're handling that tissue today. So really, while people upstream are working on putting funeral arrangements together and going through the grief process, we're taking their loved one's tissue and putting it into some incredible materials, which we'll talk about in the future. So thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
Great. My last couple of years at Terumo BCT, I had the pleasure of working with Chetan, a wonderful leader, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this panel. Chetan, I'll turn it over to you for an introduction.
Thank you, David. Chetan, Makam. I'm Vice President Global Services, which means all customer-facing functions is what I lead for Terumo Blood and Cell Technologies. In addition, I also lead our India business as Managing Director. And in this pandemic, running a business 10,000 miles away has given me a different perspective. Just to share something here, 3 years ago, around this time, David was asking me questions because I was interviewing with him for this role at Terumo BCT. And 3 years later, he's still asking me questions. So I think something never changed. And if the last 3 years are any indication after David's questions, the next 3 years should also be great. I've been in the blood business for over 15 years now, working with various companies, working across many geographies, setting up subsidiaries. And if there is something fun about me, I tell people that most people describe themselves in more than 5 words. I usually use only 2 because I'm fun to work with and I'm tenacious and I can speak English in many, many accents.
So thank you very much. And now my friend, Jamie Haggard. How about an introduction for you, Jamie?
Yeah, my name is Jamie Haggard. I'm the CEO of Greensland Medical. We're based in Fort Collins, Colorado. I was a sales rep through an executive at several different orthopedic and spine companies. A lot of it was focused on the screws and rods for treating scoliosis patients. I had a very old close friend who's a biomedical engineer give me a good idea, or it was his idea, and he said, I think we can build a better brace and keep kids out of surgery. It's actually turned out to come to fruition. And so we have a dynamic brace now that kids can move and function like normal teenagers, but we've also have a connected aspect. We're tied into Amazon Web Services. We're tracking compliance, and now we're going to be tracking pressure and other items. We're in the States right now, but we're getting demand from all over the world.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. And our final panelist is Regina Madigan. So please, Regina, let me have you introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am also really honored to be here. And I have not worked for 40 years or with anyone on this panel, but I'm super excited to be a part of it and to make a lot of new friends through this process in the area. So I'm Regina Madigan. I'm the head of finance for Medtronic's Neurosurgery division currently. I began my career at the World Bank in international finance and developmental economics in both Washington, D.C. at the head office and also in the Buenos Aires, Argentina field office. And that experience really shaped my career for 2 reasons. One, the World Bank is extremely mission driven. And I find that that resonates really well in the medical device space. And then also, we did focus on a tremendous amount of resources on health and education. And that's really carried forward into my career. I've spent the past 10 years in medical device, Before being at Medtronic, I was at Zimmer Biomet, which is a market leader in large joint orthopedic products. And I led their divisions, their finance divisions for dental, Latin America, and spine. So I'm thrilled to be here and to be a part of this. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. So the way we broke this down is we really have three kind of themed questions. The first one's around the COVID-19 pandemic. The second one is around growing and scaling a highly regulated business. And the third one is about innovation. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists a question and get some of their thoughts and insights. So the first one, and Jamie, I'm going to have you start. I'm going to follow up with Regina second, but it's around the COVID-19 pandemic. And please give us some examples, both positive and negative, about how your company's been impacted by the pandemic and how you've been able to continue to serve your customers and, most importantly, the patients who are the ultimate beneficiaries of all that we do in healthcare. And, you know, one area that's really kind of stood out to us is supply chain, logistics, procurement, and how has your supply chain been impacted as a result of the pandemic? So, Jamie, I'll turn it over to you and let's get some of your thoughts and perspectives.
Yeah, thanks. From a supply chain standpoint, we're still innovating and creating new things. Some of our smaller vendors have been a little bit harder to deal with. Just they may not have people in the office or things got shut down. So we've had to source a lot more, dual source a lot of our smaller products. Some of our bigger ones are actually coming, our plastic parts were coming from Korea or China. We were really surprised in March or April to call our big Chinese vendor, and they were so excited to get another order or whatever. Things had really toned down for a while. So some of the bigger things we were okay, but it was the small things that might be a critical piece that we don't get a lot of units of that really held us back. And from a clinical standpoint, we're in a clinical study. While it slowed things down, we have our first patients at Children's Hospital Los Angeles right now, and even in the middle of the pandemic and they're shut down, they're still wanting our product because they're trying to get products that are keeping kids out of the hospital. And that's the biggest thing we've seen is any products that can help patients stay at home is going to be a big win moving forward.
Thanks, Jamie. I'm going to go to Regina next, and then Jennifer, I'll ask you to follow Regina.
Okay, great. Well, Medtronic has a very patient-driven mission as well. And we have a ventilator business based right here in Boulder, Colorado. So when the demand seriously increased for ventilators due to the COVID crisis earlier this year, we quintupled production, but still couldn't even begin to scratch the surface of the demand that we were having for the product. So we actually took the approach to open source the design of one of the ventilators in order to get supply to the market faster. And that's something I don't think that had been done in the past. Medtronic hadn't done it in the past. I don't know if other companies had done it to face a crisis like this. But it was definitely a way that the management of the company thought that we could give back and also try to help keep up with that demand, which had really spiked for our products.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, let's get your perspective, and Tom, you're going to follow Jennifer. So Jennifer, are you on mute?
Yep. Sorry, guys. So from a higher level perspective, you know, what we saw from the association, from our members, you're hearing from some of our members today, kind of what, you know, what was positive and what some of the challenges were. Something that I can say overarchingly, we saw our members rise to the challenges that were presented by the pandemic. And we saw over 40 of our member companies pivot to contribute to this global pandemic fight against COVID-19. We saw companies that develop diagnostics, treatments, vaccines, vaccine delivery treatments, you name it. Saw research and academic institutions contribute to research. Really just a lot of great things that came out of our industry coming together and the discussion around the importance of science and the importance of innovation in a time during the pandemic. We saw some, you know, good fundraising, but that all being said, you know, while we had some great successes, like you've heard from Jamie on supply chain and you'll hear from others, there's some challenges as well. We've seen companies that had to suspend research projects, clinical trials were delayed, canceled elective procedures, which have been tough. And like Jamie said, supply chain disruptions. So in all of that, we have tried to work with these companies through the challenges, trying to figure out what are those resources we can offer and connect our members to try to get through some of those challenges that our companies have faced.
Thank you. So let me turn over to Tom, and then we'll wrap up this question with Chetan.
Yeah, our business is a little bit interesting from a supply chain perspective because everything starts with us with donated human tissue, right? So somebody has to pass away for us to get that biomaterial. And not surprisingly, and you all read about it in the news with the filling up of hospitals and critical care beds and people not going to the hospital when they're having critical issues like heart attacks or strokes, we've seen a huge decrease in the number of donors actually coming in to AlloSource, and that's been a big supply chain constraint for us, and it's causing some consternation here. It's something that most companies would never think about. So from a supply chain perspective, that's been our challenge. Jennifer and Jamie talked about the clinical slowdowns. We've seen clinical work that we're doing for some of our more advanced products completely get put on hold because the institutional review boards aren't meeting, or literally they're just not allowing even patients to come in for some of the elective surgeries that need to happen for the clinicals to actually get started. And finally, we're seeing issues with the FDA. The FDA in our area has been solely focused on vaccines. And so trying to get their attention for some of the regulatory things that we're trying to move through the system from a licensing perspective and an accreditation perspective have slowed down as well. So the last 10 months, it's for all of us, I'm sure, have been a new normal that we're dealing with here as things really get constrained at the hospital, the surgery center level on everything that we have going on.
Thanks, Tom. Chetan, let me turn it over to you for your thoughts.
Sure. I think, when we think about the challenges of COVID-19, it was actually across your customer continuum, right? It's not just supply chain. It is everything from customer support to, in our case, field engineers being actually able to go and service the equipment. And as many of you know, we make products that were used in the collection of convalescent plasma, which, everybody now wanted more devices, more kits. And many of our previous investments in expansion in factories and other things paid off. And one of the lessons I think of the pandemic was if you continue to do what you do and invest at the right times, when the pandemic comes, you're not running scared, right? So we did get, we did have the ability to increase our production 40% across our plants, make sure product was rationed out to every blood center who wanted it. We had to write letters for many countries to allow our technicians to go in and actually service the equipment. We airship PPE because our engineers need PPE, and where do you get it from? Bulk purchases. So I think overall, we did pretty well in trying to support your customer. And the key word for me in this pandemic was predictability. Many customers called us and said, thank God for the way you managed the business, the way you rationed it, the way you were prepared, because Terumo BCT is one less vendor we worry about, because you guys actually have the capacity to address our needs. And to me, having that predictability across the customer continuum was the biggest lesson that we learned, and that, your business continuity plans and other things actually got a real good workout in this pandemic.
Thank you for your comments. Now let's shift gears, and we're going to talk about growing and scaling a business. And Jennifer, I'm going to start with you, followed by Tom. But healthcare, as we all know, is just such a complex and highly regulated business here in the U.S. and around the world. So give us some examples of how you and your teams continue to grow and scale your business despite the ever increasingly complex nature of the healthcare industry. So turn over to you, Jennifer. Jennifer, I think you may be on mute again.
You think I'd get this, guys? I'm sorry. It's like only like my 1,000th Zoom interaction, so sorry. Anyway, so CVSA's role truly, as I've said before, is to make sure we're creating this environment where, health innovation thrives. And like you said, David, the healthcare system has so many complexities, and I see it, and we at the association see it as our role to really make sure that our companies and their employees, are able to continue to work during this pandemic, and that innovation is able to continue to move forward. And so from the association standpoint, we, ramp up our communications to make sure that everyone has the information they need to stay focused and productive during the pandemic. And, we continue to provide education and networking. But then something else that I touched on briefly before is, the complexity of the healthcare system and the importance of innovation. Really, we saw this during the pandemic as a great opportunity and role for us to be able to talk about, the complexities and the importance of science and how this science and innovation is pushing, impacting patient lives. And so we hosted many roundtable discussions with FDA decision makers, elected officials, federal and state. And that's something that we want to continue doing. So I would say, many of the members on this panel and then those in the attendees, just, keep us in mind if you're running into roadblocks. I think we see it as our job to help those that might not understand the healthcare complexities, and what you all need to do to push forward. We try and kind of paint that picture and connect those dots.
Thanks. Tom, I'm going to turn over to you to talk about, growing and scaling your business, and we'll follow you with Chetan.
Thank you, David. So the complexity and the growing of the business is interesting because what has happened here during the pandemic is we've seen people switch from getting surgeries in acute care settings in hospitals to out of hospital settings. And we weren't quite designed to do that. So we're now refocusing our model to be able to get surgeons what they need in outpatient settings. And frankly, procedures that I would have never guessed would be done in a surgery center in a 23 hours or less setting, where it would be cervical fusion or hip replacement or knee replacement, are now being done in these outpatient settings because the acute care hospitals are trying to keep their beds open for any COVID patients. So it's been an interesting situation. It'll be interesting to see what happens as we start to head towards the pandemic calming down, the vaccine getting more widely distributed, and what will go back into hospitals as the doctors have learned, the surgeons have learned that they can do things outside of hospitals. So that's been a real interesting complexity issue for us and first to market thing for us. The other challenge we have is one of trying to take what we get from a donated human tissue and cells, because we can get living cells from these donors sent to us in a timely fashion, and putting the research and development against that to be able to drive new products and new treatments, frankly, that can help people in a more of a pure play biotech manner rather than a scaffolding or a bone or tissue replacement manner like we were used to. So that's been a real changing model for us from an innovation perspective as well.
Good. Thanks, Tom. Chetan, let's go to you, and then we'll follow you with Jamie.
Sure. So, I think all of us in life sciences, biosciences always put the patient at the center of everything we do. And, increase patient served is our corporate motto, along with all the other things we need to do. And I think the motivations to innovate are always there, but the crisis always brings out, the urgency, right? Like Churchill said, never let a good crisis go to waste. So everything from how you interact with your customers, how you interact with, the needs of the customers are all things that we definitely had to learn and be agile with. And I think if anyone has started thinking about digital transformation, we accelerated that by at least 3 to 5 years in the last 3 to 5 months, I think, because of all these things that were happening. I think, let me take a minute here to, say we were the first company to get this emergency use authorization with the FDA, an application that takes, sometimes 4 months. The teams work within 4 days and a weekend to get the authorization for the Spectra Optia platform, which allows the cytokines to reduce when somebody with COVID is admitted into a hospital. And using this treatment, the survival rate actually increases. So it was something that was so exciting, but also needed, right? I think we did a lot of video tools because customers needed to know how to get these number of tremors we were selling for convalescent plasma installed. So our guys came up with, remote installation tools. For repair, we made tiny videos, just like you would, you want to cook something, you go onto YouTube and you can play pause and run the thing and, add your onions. Now we're like, okay, turn the screw first, do that second. So that was a big hit because people now could do things on their own. And of course, I think, teams adapt. Zoom calls, this is one of the biggest adaptations we've taken on, virtual sales meetings. So I think both product and process innovation, innovation for interaction, all of those happened. And I think, I personally don't feel that we've lost a whole lot. Of course, the human interaction is always precious, and I'm sure we always crave it. But I think even these meetings become more democratic because everyone can now put their question in chat as opposed to one person talking. So we're actually getting more ideas. So to me, this is probably driving innovation all over again just because of the ways we interact.
Great. Thanks, Chetan. Let me, Jamie, let's go to you next, and then we'll wrap up this question with Regina. So Jamie, please.
Yeah, to start with, I thought we had a pretty simple device. It's a class 1 device. It's a scoliosis brace. It's dynamic and it's really neat, but I was like, this is great because I live my world in spine in class 2 and 3 devices. Then we decided to add data collection and monitor compliance. Now, it didn't really upregulate us, but it created these other issues. Remote patient monitoring is now, it's now. It used to be the future and a little bit of telehealth. It became so important. Some of the regulations used to be in that you couldn't track data across state lines or have a telehealth visit with a patient. A lot of those barriers have dropped. One of them that is still there is the complications of taking patient data out of the EU and bringing it back to the US. And so if you're going to go there, you have to have servers there and it's just much more complicated. So as we look at scaling, it's not going to be dabbling in Europe. We have to go there and be there and have a presence in Europe just because of the digital health component of it.
Thanks. And Regina, let's hear from you, please. Let's learn from your perspective.
Great. So we've seen a lot of the same trends that everyone has spoken about, and Tom's experience really resonates on this one. So there's been a shift in elective versus non-elective procedures as the hospitals became overwhelmed with all of the COVID cases and critical care. Someone with for example, a spine issue that previously would have been on doc for a pretty immediate surgery, they went to more of a pain management situation. So we saw a decline in several of the procedures that we normally support because of the shift of resources of the hospital. The same, for example, with robotics. A hospital might not be so concerned about getting a new navigation system currently if they have all of these other critical care issues happening on the other side of the house. But I do think that we have seen an uptick in areas that are really surprising, to Tom's point, where, anything that keeps someone out of the hospital or only in the hospital for a very short period of time has seen an increase. So for example, we have some technology for drills and things like that, what basically equate to soldering irons for the brain, that, they're minimally invasive. And there's very, very little blood loss. And so people have been able to go in and out for procedures very quickly. And that was kind of, that one in particular was a very boring for us product line in the past. It just kind of was slow and steady, a couple % growth a year, flattish. And it spiked, it's grown year over year, which in this market is pretty incredible. So there's been a lot of surprises through this as we've learned to respond to how doctors are performing procedures and how hospitals are facing these challenges.
Great. Thanks, Regina. Well, let's switch over to innovation. And we really would like to learn from you all how you're looking at innovation and talk a little bit about your innovation agenda. Does your innovation come organically through acquisitions or a combination of both? And how are you looking at innovation, in this environment of COVID-19? And Chetan, you mentioned digital. That's another area, and I know as a board member of 5 different companies, I will tell you one of the hottest topics for all the companies is that shift towards digital. And we'd really like to understand, in addition to talking about innovation holistically, maybe share a little bit about what each of your organizations are doing to embrace the shift towards digital. So let's turn it over first. We'll kick it off with Tom, and then we'll follow with Chetan.
So thanks, David. I mentioned that one of the miracles of donated human tissue is that we get donated human cells. And that even though the person has passed away, their cells stay alive. And if we handle the donor appropriately, we can capture cells from the donor and use those cells. So we, in fact, have created a whole new subsidiary that does nothing but try to take those cells and turn them into transplantable pharmaceutical grade products. And that's taken us about 14, 15 months to get through the system, but it's a whole new area for us to take human derived cells with a great cell line and figure out how we can work with biotech companies to move that along. So that's just one part of the innovation. The interesting thing, and I love Chetan's comments about digital communication. I'm not sure we'll ever have surgeons come in here again, because we can do digital interfaces with them on our products. We can digitally bring them into the lab and let them look at some products development work that we're doing. And so that's really more of our digital area that we've been focused on. Frankly, our reps have not been able to go into many hospitals. Our California guys are completely shut out. And so they've had to learn how to work with both purchasing folks, OR-based people, and then the surgeons themselves on how to get face-to-face with them. So our digital is not like Jamie's digital on how to grab data from his device, but it really is how do we interface with people without having to do face-to-face, person-to-person, maybe I should say. It is face-to-face, but it's not person-to-person. So that's been all new for us as well.
Good. Thanks, Tom. Let me turn over to Chetan, then we'll go to Jamie next.
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, innovation in terms of, need as well as the crisis has been in some ways a good season for innovation. Obviously, within Terumo Blood and Cell Technologies, we've gone to, CAR T cell, enabling the CAR T cell manufacturers to improve their processes. A lot of our equipment is now being used in vaccine development. People are looking at next-gen cancer treatments. But in addition to that, I think there is also an opportunity to introduce new products into the market. We actually introduce value-added solutions, which is, using data from our devices to help people collect better cells, use them, in a better way in their process. And we're able to sell some monetized services and got a huge response, because all of a sudden customers themselves are looking for new things to do. And now that you enable it, now, there is a easier or a lower barrier to resistance for adoption of new technologies. We actually use this opportunity to also roll out software systems. We just did a global field service software implementation, 100% online with almost 300 people. Because there was no other alternative, right? So I think with respect to innovation and to Tom's comments around interacting with customers, I think those are some of the things. Webinars, we've had sometimes to turn away people from webinars because people are dying to learn. Sometimes the isolation works against them, so they would rather be on a webinar and learn and see people. So I think a lot of good innovation, and I think we will see more of it within our own processes within the company, but also in the way we interact with customers. And I think that's going to be the big change in terms of the omni-channel discussions that we will have with our customers and their interaction.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Jamie, and then after Jamie, we'll go to Regina.
Yeah, when it comes to the data collection on our device, there was studies out there saying if covering all patients, if they wear a brace 18 hours a day, they have a 90+% chance of staying out of surgery. But how do you really know? They had some monitors on it just for this study, but our surgeons were like, we want to track that very accurately. And we knew it would benefit us with the insurance companies, the hospitals and everything. We also took it to another level where we said, okay, what's the most important hours? Is it if they wear it at night, during the day? Nobody had any of that kind of data. We're going to another level with pressure sensors and other things. So the data is going to be one of the most important, or the most important part of our device. We have a mutual friend, David, the CEO of ResMed. his big push is that it's got to be a software-driven medical device. Keep improving because of your data collection and improving your device. If you can't measure it, it didn't happen. So you can say you've got something great, but you've got to have you got to be able to quantify it. And I would also say on a digital strategy, at least with the internet, we redid our website, and during COVID, we started getting inbound traffic from all over the world. Like, we were already getting it, but people are at home, they're spending more time, and they're saying, okay, my kid's not doing well in their brace, what are we going to do? And now, like yesterday, I had a call with a distributor for Brazil and Argentina who said his doctors are asking for our brace because patients and parents have been coming in and asking for it. So it's amazing how much people are now focusing and can learn information about something that's going on around the world. It was there before, but now people are spending the time to do it.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. Regina, let's go to you, then followed by Jennifer.
Yeah, so really great comments all around. I think we continue to pump a significant amount of money into traditional R&D for innovation on future product lines. But to Chetan's point, where I think this situation has made us innovate more rapidly than we ever would have in the past is around how we do things online and how we stay connected to our patients and our surgeons while not being able to really have a physical presence with them. One of the areas that we've seen actually as a really great success story is around surgeon training. So typically, surgeons would have to take time away from their practice, several days, travel time, et cetera, to make time to learn how to be trained on the next version of something or on a new product or on a new technology. And currently we've been breaking that down into smaller chunks of time and doing it online. And we've gotten actually a great response. Now there's a certain point in time when you do need an in-presence training or an in-presence type of a conversation. But for the most part, we've been able to transition a lot of things to that format, and they like it. The surgeons really, really respond to that because they're able to keep that time with their practice. Another thing that we've done that some really cool marketing person thought of, I don't know exactly who it is yet, but I want to meet them. They came up with the idea for a mobile showroom. So we take these semi trucks and we kind of suit them out for rock star surgeons, I would say. So it's a Medtronic semi that pulls up into the hospital parking lot. And it has all the latest and greatest technology on it that we can show them and let them, touch and feel. And it's been a way, a very safe way during COVID to have a more one-on-one interaction with surgeons, but also bring it to them in a safe way. So that's been something really cool. As a marketing genius came up with that one. That's a great idea.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Let's round this question out with Jennifer.
Great. I love these stories and the story around the mobile trailer that comes. I think that's just so innovative and, a great example of how you all and all companies are kind of having to think outside the box. And we've heard from so many of our companies that, the surgeon trainings are, fuller than they've ever been, and just all of those opportunities. So I have mentioned this in my other answer, but an area that we've been able to really leverage as an association for all of you is, I think, even improved and greater access to our senators and U.S. Congress people and able to do roundtables. It's notoriously can be, as you might imagine, their schedules are quite ever-changing and busy. And we've found doing virtual roundtables, we're able to lock them down and be able to invite our leaders to these roundtables, which why is that so important? It's important for them to hear from directly. It's great for them to hear from us, but great for them to hear directly from the mouth of the CEO or the executive or the employee on what you're experiencing, what roadblocks you're up against. And so that we've seen that as a glass half full outcome of this pandemic and having forced to be more remote and digital. There's countless stories of that, but even just from our communications efforts, I think it just gives opportunity. And I'm curious, I don't think we'll ever be, I think because we have gotten used to some of these digital ways, like the roundtables, like even when we're back fully in person, I imagine there'll still be components of these innovative solutions that we've all come to find in the future. So.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Well, look, I think we probably have time for one more question, and then we can probably open up for some questions from the audience here. But let's talk about talent and kind of the war for talent. You know, recruiting, hiring, developing, and retaining talent is so critical to the success of any company, especially in a very hot job market like Denver. And just be very curious about what you're experiencing and what you're doing at your company to address this critical issue. I think we had a question regarding talent. My good friend Kevin Smith is online. I think we had a question from Kevin on about this topic as well. So Chetan, let me start with you, followed by Jamie, but let's talk about the war for talent and how you're addressing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the war for talent continues. I think we've always tried to hire, people and attract them from, the coast to Denver. I myself relocated, having lived in Boston for many years and then in India. And I can tell you it's a great place to work. So if you're looking for an ad man to promote Denver, I'm here. We are always looking to also do intern programs so that we can bring in students and then help them grow within the company. We cast broader nets. I think with remote working, we probably will be able to get more people to come on board as well. And then, of course, we are continually looking at the diversity quotient of our workforce and making a concerted approach to reach out to those sections of the population that don't look like our customer base in our management, right? We should be reflecting the people we serve. And so I think we do a lot of that outreach and using a lot of data to say, are we providing those opportunities, looking at, the career progressions. So I think each of these things will help, but the best references usually are from the existing associate base. So if we think somebody is good, we should go bring them to Denver. And, I keep telling people the same things I was told when David was asking me all those questions. That is 300 days of sunshine, beautiful mountains, fresh air. What more do you want, right?
Thanks, Chetan. Let's go to Jamie, then followed by Regina.
I would say it's gotten a little more difficult since March of last year. I used to just cruise the parking lot at Medtronic and Terumo and kind of pick out people. Nobody's showing up anymore, so it's a little more difficult. We've been pretty fortunate that I had a network. I worked at several different companies, including Zimmer Biomet Lanks. And so I know quite a few people who we've talked to, and like, we're already set for our next people. Colorado is such a great place to be. People want to be here. And especially we're getting this influx from the Bay Area where people are wanting to come out here. So I've been very fortunate from that standpoint. As we continue to grow, we're going to be okay from that standpoint. And we're helping kids. So we have a pretty good mission. So, do you want to help Medtronic and that big company, or do you want to help, somebody who's really affecting kids? So.
Thanks, Jamie. So let's go over to Regina, and then we'll follow up with Jennifer.
I don't know. I have nothing to say because Jamie is just basically offering all my friends jobs, it sounds like.
You too. You're on that list. We're going to have a little talk.
Oh, I'm on the list. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Then we won't talk about it anymore. I mean, again, to reiterate what everyone's saying, Colorado is an amazing place to work. And I think it's relatively easy to attract talent here when we can't find it here. But, one thing is this whole work from home trend. It will be really interesting to see how that evolves over time. I don't know that even big, staid companies like Medtronic will have people coming to the office 5 days a week after this. So I think, the flexibility for people to work in different, from home and then commute to a central office or a hub, I think that's a trend that we'll see continue to evolve through this process. I mean, another thing we've been doing similar to Chetan is really this year, we always did, but made a concerted effort through all of our processes in hiring to look for candidates, again, who don't look like our customers or maybe our entire management team. So really widening the net in areas that we, to different, historically Black universities or things like that, where we can find candidates who are diverse and add that different perspective as well.
Thanks. Jennifer, let's go to you. Then Tom will ask you to kind of round us out on this question.
Perfect. So growing our workforce here in Colorado and supporting those needs for all of our members and companies in the ecosystem is a top priority. And like all of you said, it's an easy sell, Colorado being a great place to come live and work. Just anecdotally, I'd say over the last, year through the pandemic, I had a lot, it felt like several more conversations around companies or individuals looking to move to Colorado, which I think, is exciting twofold, that we get, more companies and workforce here, but also that Colorado is expanding on the map of places that a life science company can thrive. But something also that we're passionate about at the association is some of our work around the P-TECH program. And this is a partnership through our Colorado BioScience Institute, Ames Community College, and St. Vrain. And P-TECH is Pathways in Technology in Early College High School. And really, it's a program that was launched by IBM, and it helps high school students prepare for a career in biotech manufacturing through mentorship and industry-specific trainings. And this really gives an opportunity for these many first-generation students to be able to pursue their high school diploma and associate's degree in 4 to 5 years, and then go work with the company. And so this is a program we're extremely excited and proud about in the ecosystem. And right now it's just in biotech, but exploring opportunities to launch in the medical device community as well. So we're constantly looking at how do we continue to build our local workforce locally. So.
Great. Thank you. Tom, round us out on this question, please.
Yeah, I think everybody's done a great job talking about talent here in Colorado. I'm looking out my windows in my office. Who the hell wouldn't want to be here? The challenge, I think, and Jennifer just talked about it for a second, is we've partnered up with the local high school system, school district system, to try to get into their STEM classes, so we can work with high school kids coming right out in this internship type of model, where they can learn a skill set. Maybe they want to go to college, maybe they're not ready to go to college, but these are some of the best folks that we can get. I think Colorado still has a challenge with some of their very defined specialist areas for biotech and medical device, especially regulatory or quality folks, where there isn't quite enough staff here. And that leads to the third thing, which is, and I think we're still struggling with it, is it going to be okay to hire somebody from Champaign, Illinois, and let them work remotely? Because now of what we've talked about with digital interfacing, do they need to be here in Denver if somebody doesn't want to leave where their local home is, and we still can have them be a contributing member of the team? So I think that's a challenge we're all going to face, is the mobility of people, and people may not want to move physically to Denver, but do they need to move to Denver if we're doing everything now via video and online? So this pandemic has really sped up a lot of those type of changes.
Thanks, Tom. I heard a podcast. It's not work from home anymore. It's work from anywhere.
Right.
And that's kind of what people, kind of the theme. So look, I think we've got about 10 minutes where we can answer some questions here. Kevin Witten submitted one. And so I'm not going to ask every panelist to answer each question, but Jamie, given the fact you go to so many orthopedic conferences, I'll have you follow up on this. But Kevin Witten asked about national meetings and will they ever return? And I'll just start off by commenting, many, at least in the healthcare space, many of you know about the JP Morgan meeting. It's the largest healthcare conference in the world. It's been going on for 39 years. It's 30,000 of your closest friends descend on San Francisco and the St. Francis. It was all virtual last week, and it was flawless. And I don't know about you all, I've done a lot of these types of meetings, but I've never done one with thousands and thousands of people on it. And I will tell you, it was absolutely flawless. And you have to question, will we go back? I don't know the answer to that, because people still, I think, want to get together and have some of those interactions. But that was an interesting one. And I did participate. I'm on the board of directors of Molica, a large wound care company over in Europe. And we had our global kickoff meeting for salespeople, a couple thousand salespeople around the world, done virtually last week. And once again, it was done flawlessly. So you have to wonder, what is the future of some of these meetings? Jamie, you go to a lot of orthopedic conferences. What are you hearing?
Yeah. So for the pediatric orthopedic surgeons of North America, that's going to be in person in December. or I'm sorry, in June this year. So for us, it killed it. We're getting ready to launch and everything. It's, you know, you want to be at a big convention. So it's going to happen. I know those are still going to go on because a lot of these, it's a time when all the fellows get together. You see that a lot with their old attendings and stuff. So you're going to still see that happen. They have scheduled that one. The big orthopedic meeting, AAOS, I believe, is going in person in this fall. I think something to remember on that is there was actually a meeting in Vail last weekend. It's called Base to Summit's a spine meeting. I didn't think it was going on. I got called right before it, and they had real limits on it. You can only have 50 people in that, but it still went on. Something to remember is many of these surgeons are frontline people. They've been vaccinated, so they're not, you know, the attendees aren't as concerned about COVID and that because they've been vaccinated. It's all us worker bees if we haven't been. So I still think I think they're gonna go back to it. Is it gonna be as impactful as it was before? Probably not. The thing I'm hearing is a lot of the meetings they go to are for their CME credits, and they can get those online and plug through it. They don't have to go anywhere for it. So they want to go to a place that they want to be and see the people that they want to see. I think the educational standpoint or point of it will try to be online as much as possible.
Thank you. We got a question from Jacqueline, and I'm going to ask both Tom and Regina to comment on this. Do you think keeping people out of the hospital when not absolutely necessary will continue on after COVID ends? So maybe let's start with you, Regina, get the Medtronic perspective. Do you think we're seeing kind of this permanent shift? And Tom, one of you were talking about this earlier. We'd love to get your perspective on this. So let's start with you, Regina.
Yeah, I do think this is a trend that will continue for several reasons. One of them is cost. If you just think about it, me being the finance person, from a cost perspective for the healthcare system, it does make more sense that some of these procedures evolve to being done in an ambulatory surgery center or, you know, not in a hospital. So I do think that will be a trend that continues going forward for sure.
Tom, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I would agree with Regina. I think it's a permanent trend. I mean, if you can do, you know, I know a surgeon and a surgery center in Chicago that's bringing people in at 4 o'clock in the morning to do 1 level, 2 level cervical fusion, which normally was an inpatient stay for what, 3 days? And they're keeping them for 23 and a half hours. It's efficient. It's clearly cost effective. And for the surgeon, he's doing 3 of these in the morning, and then he's headed to the tertiary medical center to go do his other procedures or see patients that are in the hospital for some other condition that he's been treating. So for a surgeon, it's incredibly efficient. And I think the business model challenge will be who gets to own that patient, because right now, a lot of these surgeons are opening up their own surgery centers and cutting the hospital out. So you start to wonder, what is the long-term use of a hospital, if not for things like we're dealing with the COVID patients, but what role will they have in surgeries, unless it's just, you know, trauma and big major reconstructive surgeries that happen either for cancer or trauma. So I think it's permanent. I think we'll see more surgeons moving that way.
Great, thank you. Chetan, I'm going to ask you one. We have, you know, we're knowing that BCT, as well as all the companies here, but BCT, we have very complex, you know, supply chain. And do you have any perspectives on, you know, how the tariffs, have we seen increase in tariffs, how they've impacted the business over the last year? And do you hear anything from a trade policy standpoint that may continue to affect the supply chain for Terumo BCT?
I think more than the tariffs, the freight costs, because of the lack of commercial flights, has hit you know, us probably a little bit more. You know, we try to absorb what we can and share what we can with customers. I think the trade tariffs many times do get passed on to the customers, and in many cases, the raw material tariffs probably have a negative impact on us. But then we are also beginning to see, you know, countries like China, Russia, India want to localize manufacture. So they are putting out a lot more schemes around, you know, Make in India is one of them. I think, you know, in China for China is another. Russia gives preference to people who manufacture in Russia on tenders. So I think you're going to see a lot more countries want to localize or indigenize their supply chains. We've seen, for example, a lot of medical device parks being set up in many countries for local manufacture. Because if you think of med devices, there are only a few companies around the world, and most of the other countries buy from these companies, right? I mean, Terumo is in 130 companies, Medtronic probably in a few more. And so I think you're going to start seeing a little bit of protectionism, but I think once the vaccine and pandemic eases, some of the knee-jerk reactions may get tempered as well.
Thank you. Jennifer, let me go to you. We have a question about the new administration, inauguration today. Any potential impacts on the medical device industry that you're hearing about? I think we know our Senate delegation, both Senator Hickenlooper as well as Bennett, are huge proponents of our industry. But are you hearing anything from the new administration or hearing anything going forward that may impact our industry?
Great question. And I thought that I might be tagged for that answer. So Emily Roberts, our vice president, and I were discussing this actually earlier in the week, and it still remains to be seen kind of what the full administration and the different appointments, and curious to see what will happen with the FDA. And what will happen there. But I think one thing where there's opportunities, and I think positive, is that we've seen areas that they're standing with us in science in the medical device arena. But in another area where we see opportunities is around value-based care. There's a lot of interest in looking at value-based care. As you all might know, large conversation at the federal level and state is around the cost of the healthcare system. And so we imagine and believe that will be a continued conversation. But David, you're 100% correct. We have a great delegation. Senator Bennett and Senator Hickenlooper are both very familiar and advocates and aware of our industry. And so we'll just keep knocking on all the doors and making sure we're advocating and they understand how important it is that we keep innovation moving forward. I saw another question in there around funding and working with the different agencies. And something I'd say there, if you run into any roadblocks, that's something that Senator Bennett has been, and some of the other offices as well, want to hear from our companies and want to know where we're hitting roadblocks so that they can try and help, because it's important that these agencies are getting back to us. And so we will be doing some outreach to make sure we learn from you all what those roadblocks are so that we can better communicate those to federal officials.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. We need to wrap it up. And I would just say this last comment or last question regarding funding from HHS, DOD, VA, National Science Foundation. There are some great success stories here in Colorado, not the least of which is Medtronic and Terumo BCT. With that, thank you, panelists. Excellent job. I think we all had the opportunity to learn from you. I'm going to turn it back over to Catherine to wrap us up.
Thank you so much, David. Much appreciation to you and to our panelists today. Thank you so much to all the attendees for joining us for this engaging, enlightening, and educational experience. We hope you'll come back and see us at the World Trade Center Denver. Do check out our website for upcoming events to learn about our trade services and our membership options. We hope that everyone stays well and has a wonderful rest of 2021. See you all very soon. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thanks.